Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. How are you doing all? I hope you are doing well, staying healthy, enjoying life, and must be planning to improve your life. Here we are to do so. Here, daily we read a chapter of a novel to develop reading habit to improve our English, including reading, writing, speaking, vocabulary at the same time, enhancing our knowledge. As we know, reading is the best practice to develop all these things, which help us in many ways, and reading could be one of the good hobby to make a change in our life. As we have heard to many prominent personality that book change their life, add values, widen their knowledge. We can live other life by reading a book and get all those experience and learn from their mistake. So why to commit same mistake if we can learn from their mistake and improve our life. So join me in this journey to become best version of ourselves. Before starting, I would love to hear your thought in comment section. Remember to like, share with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe my channel. Press the bell icon for daily updates. Today we are going to read chapter 6, or you can say part 6, because this novel has divided in a part. So today we are going to read part 6 of the novel, which is Your Dreams Are Mine Now, which is written by Ravinder Singh. So today we will read this and see that what is there. In the previous video, we had read about that Saloni was telling to Rupali about her affairs with Imran, that how she fall in love with Imran, and Rupali was just listening, and then at the end of the conversation she thought that would anyone ever fall in love with her, and like that part ended. So today we are going to read this and see that what is next and what happened next. So let's read and see what is there.
6. One hot afternoon, Rupali stepped out of her hostel for a brief interaction with one of her professors to clear a doubt she had regarding his paper. Professor Mahajan taught accounts in the college. He was one of the more well known faculty members. Getting a 10-minute one-to-one meeting with him was a big deal, and he had accepted Rupali's request only after seeing her enthusiasm on the subject. If I am here day after tomorrow, you can come by 2 p.m., he had said. Rupali wouldn't have required to meet Professor Mahajan in person had it not been for the upcoming student union elections that had disrupted classes in the entire due in an unimaginable way. Prominent walls of the campus buildings shamelessly mocked the election regulators' norm of not pasting bills and posters on the wall. They were all over the place, from the main entrance gates to inside the college toilets. Amid the high drama of political outfits announcing their manifestos and their candidates, the loud sloganeering and clashes in the campus, and the numerous print media reporters hovering around. Attending classes was the last thing on students' minds. But then there were students like Rupali, who instead of wasting their time, thought of utilizing the same to kickstart their upcoming project work for the semester. Politics never interested Rupali. She was far apart from the world of elections, so much so that, unlike the majority of due students, she didn't even know who all were standing for the posts and which parties they belonged to. She wasn't too sure if she knew the names of all the political outfits fighting the elections in due, and it didn't bother her. She had her priorities. She had come all the way from Patna to Delhi to study. She wanted to stay away from taking sides in campus politics. Rupali and Saloni were in the same project group. Both of them had one individual project, as well as one group project to complete by the subsequent month end. When it came to her group project, Rupali had little expectation from Saloni. In fact, Saloni had opted to do a project with Rupali because she knew that she could relax and let the studious girl in their group complete it. Any interference from her would only bring the quality down, is what she kept reminding Rupali. Given the circumstances in college and the nature of her roommate, Rupali thought it wise to use the election period to accomplish as much of the project as possible. The project was on the subject of accounts and she sought Professor Mahajan's time with regard to the same. Rupali reached the college on time. The unofficial mass bunk of all classes had turned the college block into a lifeless building. The open lawns and the main administrative blocks stole the limelight, for they were the new centers of mass gatherings. She walked into the college building amid the abandoned classrooms and took the staircase to go straight to the accounts department. But when she reached Professor Mahajan's cabin, she found the door locked. She looked at her watch. It was exactly 2 p.m. She wondered if she should hang around for a while. The professor could have been held up. When he did not arrive even after 10 minutes of her waiting, she went to look at other faculty members' cabins in the department to check if, by any chance, Professor Mahajan was there. She checked the Hod's office as well. But to her dismay, she didn't find anyone from the department. In fact, she didn't come across a single human in the area. The whole floor was desolate. Rupali was about to walk back in disappointment when, all of a sudden, she heard someone running up the staircase in her direction. It turned out to be the peon who worked in the accounts department. Finally seeing a face on that deserted floor, Rupali quickly asked him, Bhaiya, Professor Mahajan kaha hai, pata hai? Do you know where Professor Mahajan is? Professor Mahajan. The peon murmured as he looked up at the ceiling, trying to recall where he had last seen the professor. She kept waiting till the peon looked back at her, only to shake his head from left to right. No, he hadn't seen him around. So he turned back to leave. Giving out a sigh of disappointment, Rupali placed her notebook back in her bag. She had no choice but to go back to her hostel. Suddenly, her phone rang. The sound of the phone shocked her as it echoed in the empty corridor. She quickly pulled it out of her bag and looked at the number. It was her brother Tanmay calling from Patna. This sort of cheered her up. She quickly zipped her bag and picked up the call. Hello, she said smiling. Hello, she said loudly the second time. Hello, be loud, I am not able to hear you. Rupali's loud voice echoed in the silent dark corridor. Yahan signal nahi aata. Us taraf jaye. The network is weak here. Go to that side. The peon shouted from behind Rupali, pointing his finger in the opposite direction on the same floor. Rupali followed the instructions in haste. But by the time she walked down the dark corridor and arrived on the other side of the building, the call had dropped. So she tried to call back. But then, the very next moment she disconnected the call, for there was something that had suddenly caught her attention. In front of her was a window and there was some movement she could detect inside. As the outside was comparatively darker than the inside, Rupali had a clear view without anyone from inside being able to easily notice her. From a narrow gap in between the panes of the window, she saw something that shook her. She saw the back of a lady, who from her dress, appeared to be a lady peon from the college. She was standing in front of a man who sat on the edge of a table with his feet comfortably touching the ground. Rupali could barely see him. But what was clearly obvious was that he was running his hands over her back, up inside her blouse. The lady peon's body language showed her reluctance. She was trying to pull herself out of the man's grip. Yet she wasn't shouting, but murmuring. She repeatedly tried to pull the man's hand out of her blouse. But the man persisted, clearly pushing himself against her will. For one moment, when the peon managed to step away, Rupali was able to see the face of the man. It was as if her fears had come true. Professor Mahajan stretched his hand to grab the peon's arm. Rupali was scared. She knew she had no business being there and that this could be dangerous for her. She pulled herself back and tried to breathe. Suddenly, she felt a heaviness, as if a wave of nausea hit her. She began sweating profusely and felt as if she was going to throw up. Was this really happening or could it be a nightmare? But the peon's low distressed voice told her it was really happening. She took a moment to digest that. A highly respected professor of her college was actually forcing himself on a lady peon. A part of her mind told her to run away and forget what she had seen. But then the thought of the lady peon began to bother her and she stopped. It was certain what was happening behind the closed doors and within the walls of the vacant faculty room wasn't an act of mutual choice. She had witnessed the signs of silent and hesitant protests of the peon. And if she walked away, it would haunt her for the rest of her life. So she thought to herself for a few moments. She recalled her Baba's words: stand for what is right and do not let evil persist. She knew what she was going to do. And when she had made up her mind, she looked here and there and stepped closer to the window again. She was scared of being caught doing what she was about to do. Yet she was determined. Right then, her phone rang. It was Tanmay again. Shit, she uttered and immediately disconnected the call and put her phone on silent mode. She quickly sent an SMS to Tanmay telling him that she would call him back in a while. Rupali, with all her guts, turned back to look through the window. Professor Mahajan had by now managed to lay the lady down on the table, her sari riding all the way up to her knees. She was still trying to push him away, but the professor, being stronger, did not seem to bother. Rupali could hear her pleading with him to leave her alone, but the professor kept telling her that he would let her go very soon and all she had to do was show her willingness. Outside the window, Rupali quietly put the cell phone between the window pane and held it at an angle behind the curtains. She then zoomed in on the scene and began recording. For the next couple of minutes, she filmed everything that happened inside the room. The moment the professor unzipped his pants, Rupali realized that she couldn't be a mute spectator any longer. Besides, she wasn't prepared to handle the anticipated visuals. It was time for some action. She already had enough evidence. Now all she had to do was rescue the peon. She knew she had to be discreet. So she went to the end of the corridor from where she had come and started walking back towards the same window. This time she made noise with her feet, loud enough to be heard by the people inside the faculty room. She casually tapped on the door and a few window panes and faked talking to someone over the phone. She was loud in her fake conversation as well. What? You are outside. I am in the building. Why don't you all come here? It will take you a minute. You guys can do the election campaign planning here. No, no, there is no one here. It's absolutely empty, she said, walking up and down the corridor, making her words audible to the people inside the room. Wait. I will come down. Meet me at the ground floor. Bye, she said. When she was done, she quietly walked down and waited for a few minutes on the ground floor. She realized that her trick had worked when, the next moment, she saw the frightened peon walking out of the building in haste. As the lady peon speedily walked out of the building, she looked here and there, as if hoping that no one had seen her. She was continuously wiping her tears. That's when Rupali realized that she too had started crying. But hers were tears of relief. She wanted to stop that lady. She wanted to speak to her, get to know all that she had gone through. She knew she was making a compromise by being in that room with Professor Mahajan. She wanted to help her. But perhaps that moment wasn't right. Perhaps she should give her some time, she thought. And then, at the next moment, a thought struck her. The professor might also want to leave the building and might see her. In panic, she began to run and ran straight into a firm athletic body and a set of arms that tried to help her steady herself. At a sharp turn at the corner of the college block, she suddenly looked up and her eyes met a set of familiar eyes. He was the same senior who had questioned her about the plant. Yes, sorry, I'm sorry, she blurted out as she came to a dead stop. He looked up at her and then in every direction across the building, as if trying to figure out why she was running. But he didn't ask her anything. Rupali moved away from him and gave a weak smile underneath her moist eyes. He didn't respond. As she walked away fast, she could feel his stare on her back. Who is this guy? Why is he always there whenever anything bad happens to me? She thought to herself.